The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
you're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday, November 20th, 2017. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, I like to start the show by thanking our patrons without whom this is not possible. Tonight's a special episode. I've been requesting and suggesting for some time that the conversations that we've had around sexual harassment, sexism, sexual assault, they've been led by me. And I've been inviting on a regular basis for the women of Progressive Army and women in general who wanted to chime in on this discussion to utilize my platform to do so. And tonight is just part one in a series of conversations that we'll have about this issue, because the best thing that I can do, instead of sitting around wondering and looking crazy because I don't understand, it from a male perspective, because that's just not my world, right? But instead of always saying that on repeat, like, I don't understand rapists, I don't understand, sexual harassment, I don't, understand it from the perspective of I've never done it, and I don't, instead of just saying that, it's time for us to aggressively push back using all of our resources and all of our platforms. And so tonight, in this first part, I'm joined first by, of course, my sister, Anoa Changa. Anoa, thanks so much. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. I don't know if you already have on your side, but thanks for joining us. But she's going to join me for the A part. Hey, Anoa, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. So she's here I know you're here for the first part. Later on, we're going to be joined by a couple of other voices to discuss this issue. But first, I know we have to get, or at least I do. You don't have to, but I have to get the elephant out of the room. I have to address the elephant that's on the table, because if I do, I'm going to be called on it. If I don't, I'm going to be called on it. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. But so at least I can do is be true to myself. Jordan Chariton from TYT. I don't know if any of you have found out as of yet, but he's been fired from TYT surrounding the allegations of sexual assault of one of his journalists at Truth Against the Machine. Now, I've been following it over the weekend, and I've been trying to get as much information as I could get, basically, so I can know what the hell I'm talking about. And I know one of the things that's jumped out to me the most about this is, regardless of what you think about Jordan or what you think about the allegations, this entire thing got extremely messy and in a very unfortunate way. If you can imagine a way to make a bad situation worse, I think this entire episode has gone from horrible to even more horrible, with how just this weekend of allegations going back and forth, and who's telling the truth, or who is a spy, and who is, there's so many convoluted things around this, ultimately ending today. Yeah. Tim Black put out a video saying that he felt that there was a potential lawsuit being threatened against him, and that caught my attention. That honestly, that caught my attention, because for a myriad of reasons. But ultimately, late this afternoon, Jordan released another Medium article saying that he had been released from the Young Turks. I don't know if you want to say anything about it.
I absolutely agree with the way you framed it. I know we've been talking about it internally about just as watching it unfold, right? Even though the allegations involve, behaviors that occur in people's private life. We did a conversation on the Discourse with Brandon Sutton and his crew Friday night, just kind of just going off a little bit, not so much in terms of taking sides or any of that nature, but people do what they do behind closed doors, right? However, there is a conversation to be had, and there has been a lot of very bad social media behavior that makes it difficult to just sit by and be unbiased and wait for the investigation to, conclude, as was the insistence with the initial post that Jordan posted. Quite honestly, just as a lawyer, as someone observing all this, it just looked like it was not handled very well from those who were purporting to defend Jordan. I understand that people feel like challenged, like, well, I want to defend someone, I want to stand up and I want to speak up for someone that I support, but just some of the attempts that people made, it really fell short in whether or not people believe, Carly Hammond or anyone else involved, whether they're willing to come forward or they previously said something and now have changed their mind, whatever the situation is, right? The problem has been when we had women in particular saying, well, I know him, and it doesn't have to be Jordan, it could be anyone, right? I know him and he treated me so well and we had this great relationship and nothing like this ever happened. So there's no way that he could have done that. Like, we got to understand that people have different relationships with different people in their lives, right? Again, I'm not a court. I am a lawyer. I play one on TV. No, I'm just joking. I'm a real one during the day. But we got to really be honest and take a step back and look at the conversation, the way this whole thing is unfolding. Because for weeks now, I mean, for at least a month, if not more, we've seen countless stories come out, mainstream media figureheads. I mean, we just saw Jeffrey Tambor, Charlie Rose. There was an allegation about staff at Vox. I mean, basically all the major journalism outlets, movie stars, producers, elected officials, we are seeing heads roll and everybody's like, yes, trust women. Yes, you listen to victims, support the victims. Now we have something hit and come into the leftist independent media space. And let's just be very clear. There are unfortunately a lot of women out there in our movement spaces that and probably men too. Men are less likely, because of just the culture and the way, with hypermasculine, are just less likely to talk about these incidents. Terry Crews recently came forward to talk about, when he was accosted. But like, there are a lot of people who are just regular people in our everyday movement spaces that have had to deal with some degree of these types of issues. And in some instances have still had to work, or they've had to withdraw from important work because it wasn't handled effectively, or because people, double down because so-and-so is so important to the work that these issues go unchecked and undealt with and unresolved. And part of the reason why, go ahead.
I want to jump in right there because I think that's important. It's like no one individual is so critical to this work that we can't be replaced, and that worthwhile feeling that you have to protect them. And now, I mean, I want to make a clear delineation here. I'm not talking about Jordan at this point. I'm talking about this entire movement space at this point, because there's nobody that's so important. My show's not that important. People who are maybe on the front lines, nobody's so important that we can't that we have to knee-jerk reaction defend them, especially Noah, where you just outlined where we believe this person, we believe that person, we believe that person, we believe Brett Ratner, we believe that he's guilty, we believe the women in the case of Roy Moore, we believe the women in the case, some of us believe the women in the case of Al Franken.
Well, we started seeing this before the Jordan thing hit. We started seeing this with Al Franken, right? Absolutely. Like everyone digging up, like and it wasn't just centrist accounts, the progressive, there were some, I mean, I'm saying, we started seeing that with the Al Franken stuff, but the same thing. Oh, they're lying. Oh, she was a Playboy bunny. Oh, this, oh, that. And the type of slut shaming and stuff that is happening. People, I had someone commenting on one of my posts earlier asking about when are we going to go after sex workers? I've seen people suggest, and Brandon Sutton actually did a really good thread a week or so ago about sex workers and how we shouldn't wish sexual predators on sex workers either. I mean, what people don't realize, just because that is their business, sex workers are actually a marginalized and vulnerable population. And we definitely should not be wishing people who already are abusing power and access to power on a population that is even more vulnerable, right? I got so many issues with SVU and the police and things like that, but it's still a guilty pleasure of mine. And there's so many, one of the things that still rings so true, and it's a reality, is that when you still look at how sex workers will be the ones who are punished and criminalized, even if they're underage, right? So even in a situation where something is technically statutory rape or whatever, but they're a sex worker, it's all of a sudden the regular rules go out the door. Same thing in terms of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, things of that nature. People act as if just because you're a sex worker, then anything goes.
Right.
And that's not the case. That bodily autonomy still exists in those instances, in all these instances. Like, just because, even if it's the same thing when once upon a time when marital rape and relationship rape and things like that were not considered real, entities. I know, why are you talking about this? We've only been talking about sexual assault because this is we need to have a greater conversation about how we're communicating and dealing with issues, particularly when they make us uncomfortable, particularly when they involve people that we care about. Yeah. Like we really have to find a way to talk and work through things, because what will happen is, just looking at what's happened over the last several days with the different statements and the let me screenshot and highlight, and exaggerated comparisons, comparing him to Emmett Till and just all types of stuff. There is a conversation that's happening, and threats of lawsuits if anyone says anything. I understand the desire to defend people that you care about. I understand when your professional career is on the line to defend yourself. However, there is a degree of accountability that needs to be taken, because even assuming the account Jordan put forth is true, even if we were assuming that true, that's still an environment that's extremely unprofessional and potentially toxic. If we're talking about this work that we're all doing, if you're someone who's investing in all of us as independent creators to do this work, you're entrusting us to not be snorting, not saying that's what he was doing, but seriously though, you're entrusting us,
right.
to
you want us to go out there. You want us to go out there and do the work and not go out there and do anything else.
And it's not saying that you can't cut up and do your own thing. When we enjoyed ourselves when we were in DC, when I was with the guys in Minnesota, we enjoyed ourselves as well. But we actually made sure that we were doing what you all entrusted us to do when we crowdfunded for you to support us. Again, that's not passing any judgment, but I do think that when we're building these organizations, when we're building these whether organizations, news orgs, nonprofits, whatever, there's a degree of accountability and professionalism that has to be built into our work. Right. And we got to be prepared for the repercussions of, lapses in judgment. And that does not mean that your acolytes then go all over social media attacking people, saying it's BS, because they have a counterpoint. Now, whether or not the allegations are true or not, people still deserve to have their side, and it all will come out in a wash, right? If there really was an investigation that was ongoing within TYT, which could be why there has been no statement from TYT, that should have been allowed to go forward. Again, I understand the need to defend oneself, but the incessant harassment that we all witnessed across social media platforms and the statements coming out, I mean, y'all need Olivia Pope on speed dial. For future reference. Never, ever, 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 ever. Tatum folks, never, ever, ever put out a statement like that ever again. I don't know who y'all might be able to write, but you lack cultural competence in terms of this environment and this atmosphere right now. Progressives right now going off on a handle about, the work and, we need to get back to the real issues. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, these things are very real issues. Racism, these things are very real issues. Identity politics. This is actually exactly why nuance and identity, why it actually matters. Because there are conversations we need to be having in these spaces about how we're engaging, how we're building, how we're interacting. And, we got some, people, our work is passionate. We end up spending a lot of time with other people away from our homes and stuff like that. Things happen. That's fine. But at the same time, we got to have some we have to have some cultural competency. And what I mean about that is we need to understand how to discuss these issues, right? Again, you want to defend yourself, that's fine. But when your version of defense is not only is slut shaming, is threatening people with lawsuits, is trying to squash anyone being able to speak or express anything because you don't agree and you want to control the narrative. That's the same thing we saw from Harry Weinstein, right? Like it's hard for me, I'm saying, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt and let's see everything that comes out. But at the same time, when you start using such heavy-handed tactics like that, that does not look good at all. Yeah. It doesn't.
Let me jump in there, because here the other side of this coin is I always challenge the audience. I always challenge my audience without fail. And I want to challenge my audience in this way specifically. You don't know us, and I'm not saying that any way other than to say you don't really know anyone that you're watching on television or you're watching on the internet. You only know what we show you. Now, I think I'm pretty, I'm really transparent, but there's still things about me that you don't know. And I say that to say is that, like, when people accuse people that you admire, you have to really take a step back and say, okay, I don't really know them unless you spent personal time with us. And even some of the people who I've spent personal time with don't really know me, right? And so I'm not saying this to say that you should believe anything and everything that you hear about me, but I'm saying just in general, you don't know these people until you actually have time to spend time with them and get to know who they are off screen. And I think it's important for you not to become so invested in us as individuals as much as you're invested in not only the work, but the issues, right? The sexual harassment, sexual assault is a part of our work. Working against that should be a part of our work on a regular basis. It's not as footnote for us to say, oh, let's get back to, no, that is the work. And when you see, Noah, you said it earlier, you call it's an epidemic. It is I don't want to cuss on this one, but it is an epidemic of unseen proportions. Like, I had no idea until Me Too exactly how prevalent it was. You had an inclination, right? You heard about it, but when you see just about every single woman who follows you and that you follow, save maybe 0.1%, saying that they've been sexually assaulted, how can you ever say, let's get back to the work? That is the work. I
mean, it's definitely a part of the work. The other thing is, like, we just saw the report there was an article about, 2 young women, one worked for the Hillary campaign, one worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign, both reported incidents of sexual harassment. We are aware of the prior issues with Arturo Carmona, who was a senior staffer on the campaign. I mean, it's endemic in society in general, the way we treat and appreciate and respect women. It is a problem, and it permeates throughout our regular life and workspaces. We can't just keep ignoring it, whether it's boys will be boys or whatever the case may be, or you're overreacting or whatever it was, or it was fine 2 weeks ago. I mean, like, and we need to do more than just no means no, right? We need to have greater conversations with our kids at younger ages too about, what does consent really mean? What does that really look like? And stop thinking about it as some initial transactional interaction and something that's really more of a fluid concern and understanding when we're conversing and dialoguing with people. But that's why I'm really happy that we're able just to have a general conversation and chat, because, like, just watching this all fly out of the hand. And again, it doesn't really matter who you believe, if you don't believe them, whatever the case may be, it's how we talk about things. Absolutely. The communication matters, right? Because really, you're also modeling and patterning behavior. And so this could actually prevent the next person from daring to take that step and come forward, because people with larger platforms can just simply pile on together and try to shush people up who have smaller platforms, right? That was another thing I noticed. You had a bunch of people who are quote unquote, let the pro, Jordan folks, pro Tatum folks tell a bunch of nobodies who are upset and mad that they were fired or whatever the case may be, and they had an exogram. We need to hear their side of the story to be able to judge for ourselves what's going on. And people were claiming about, what about due process? That's those are standards in a court of law, in terms of, accountability and respect and what we're doing in our movement spaces. We don't have time to sit here and give potential aggressors the benefit of the doubt and then shut out people who are proclaiming to have experienced certain experiences. I mean, we really do need to be looking at other models for dealing with this than how the regular court system works, because when you look at the regular court system, that's a really bad analogy, folks, because most of the times when you're talking about rape, sexual assault, these types of incidences, people who really should be getting, dealt with do not.
Mm-hmm. I want to welcome to the show Jacqueline and Jacqueline Lukman. I wanted to ask you before. Thanks so much for joining us. We have Go ahead. And just take it to about 10 seconds or 20 seconds and tell the audience about yourself, and then we're going to pull you into the conversation.
Well, my name is Jacqueline Lukman, as you actually correctly stated. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. And my husband and I have a platform on social media called Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Lukman Nation. It's a part of the whole Lukman Nation media where we do YouTube videos, Twitter, Facebook. We talk about politics and social issues, global issues from a Black Pan-Africanist perspective, faith issues, all kinds of stuff. And I also do a show called Brick by Brick in Lukman Nation, where all I talk about is the history of how we got here. And I'm in the middle, well, at the end of the Rise of the Political Black Left series. And I hope I'm going to finish that next week. We'll see how that goes. But that's me.
Absolutely. And we're going to be joined momentarily by one or two more panelists. And so, Noah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be here and I'm going to turn it over to you, because this is more about a conversation that I wanted women to have on my platform, because most of the time when I talk, it's in language that, unfortunately, I haven't mastered the language. I talk and then I talk from my perspective as a man. But this is obviously an issue that has to be spoken about from a woman's perspective. And then, of course, I know you mentioned you wanted men to chime in as well. So I'll be here for any part of that. But ultimately, I want to shift it to you and you lead the conversation as far as a couple of key things, at least for this one. The assumption that it's not happening in progressive circles. I want to nail that one, if nothing else. And then the rest I would leave to you. So Noah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been talking about, because again, we've been going back and forth, we've been watching this like unfold, this most recent incident, and there are people who have shared in confidence, right, that different things have happened at different points. Like just even thinking about the past few years in this movement space we've been in, people have had instances, whether it's just, just the tip of the iceberg, run-of-the-mill misogynistic behavior to actual sexual assault, to just other instances in between people, because again, we end up working very closely with folks, whether you're actually on the ground with people or you develop relationships and then you finally meet people. I mean, different things happen. And it's not that somehow because we all believe in Bernie or we all believed in these other lofty ideas that we're immune to what we're seeing, being played out in the regular dominant society. So I'm not advocating that we just cast people aside. I would be interested in for people who actually do this work, and hopefully we'll, in one of our next conversations, we're trying to, plan these out to have 2 or 3 more. We'll be able to have some of the folks who are actually organized in California around the sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations that have come out of the California legislature. There are people who are working to help with the reform process there. So hopefully we'll be able to get pull some folks in from Cali to talk with us about some of the things they're working on, because we really do need to understand how to address these things in our movement spaces, in our organizations, in the work that we're doing. We can't just turn a blind eye and ignore it because so-and-so has good connections or they have a big social media presence, they boost our work. Like, we need to be accountable to each other and respect each other to hear out both sides and then come to a decision accordingly about what needs to be done. It's also detrimental to our ability to trust each other and do this work. If I feel like I've impressed upon someone or I've trusted someone to share what my story is, but then they just really just use that to run back and say this is what she's claiming, that builds mistrust, and that's really deceitful. That's like a really deceitful practice. Yay, Jamie's here. I'm sorry, I lost train of thought. Because Jamie says she's coming on screen for this conversation.
Hey, Jamie, welcome to the conversation. Hi. How are you? We don't have audio for you. Oh, there we go. I hear you now.
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. Okay, so there's a little bit of delay.
Tim is actually live with Carly right now.
Who is?
Tim is actually live with Carly Hammond, who is the woman from the initial allegation.
Good.
So with the news, I guess.
Right.
So I guess that was a fake. I'm not getting into all of that. Yeah. Never mind.
We can still, let's talk about the broader issue and the
broader issue. We're not getting into all of that dramatic minutia.
Yeah. So you were saying people being able to trust us in these spaces.
I mean, it's about being able to trust each other in these spaces, being able to build. I mean, people should be able to feel safe. People should be able to feel like themselves, like they can really be focused and be present on the work we're doing. And this goes for men too. right? And it's not even just, you know, between hetero relationships and interactions. I mean, there's a lot of work we have to do just in terms of respect, interactions, accountability, etc. And I know that Jamie had some thoughts, and I know Jacqueline has plenty of thoughts on this as well.
So let's go with Jacqueline, and then we'll pass it to Jamie. Jacqueline, just in general, the work in this space and progressive circles, and the prevalence of not only sexism, but you know, sexual harassment and assault in some cases.
I mean, it's interesting because it's, for a lot of people, we're remote, right? So for most of the time, I know in my instance, I'm not physically working around people that I actually work on teams with. So that's an interesting dynamic all by itself, where there might be things going on that if you're not always in physical proximity to people, you don't know anything about it. And then, you know, then there's that bizarre dynamic where people are expecting you to know things about people that you don't know, because you've had a relationship with them for all this period of time, but your relationship has been completely non-physical. It's been completely virtual, completely online. So like you were saying earlier, all you really know about the person is that persona that they present you when you're working with them in an online capacity, right? But then there are these other instances where, and Standing Rock, like is an instance that it loomed very large in my mind, because during that time there were a lot of activists who were very new to activism, actually, and they all went up to Standing Rock for a great cause, and they should have, and that was wonderful. But these are people who weren't used to, and I'm not saying that this is the fault of anybody's fault. It was just a very new dynamic of living in proximity with different people that a lot of people didn't know anything about. So you've got people who don't understand, who've never been involved in communal living, who don't understand the need to erect and enforce serious boundaries, that everybody isn't your friend,
right?
That, you know, everybody who's there for the same reason isn't really there for the same reason. So there's all of that, you know, typical general maturity kind of thing that you know, we have to, that I have to kind of think, okay, not everybody is like 50 going into this like me. You know, that I mean, almost literally kids going up there. It's a Standing Rock, spending months of time communal living with people that they didn't know.
But that's, I have to interrupt there, because I think that is so critical. The fact that, you know, you and I'm almost 40. I'm not going to say how old Noah is, but we have some years behind us to know these things when we go in. And that's kind of how we're able to avoid some of these situations, because we're old enough to have been in situations before we got into these spaces with people we don't know. And a lot of people who are in these scenarios, they're really young and they're vulnerable to being taken advantage of in some instances. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to highlight that part of what you were saying.
No, I'm glad you interrupted, because I wondered if I should say that, because I don't ever want to be like that older person who makes younger activists feel like they don't have anything to contribute because they're younger. I don't want to be that person. And that's really easy to get into. But that is a reality, that there's something to be said for a little bit of experience. At the same time, there were things that happened, that there was a lot of conjecture, a lot of accusations. See, this isn't new. In these allegations of sexual assault against women, it is not new in the progressive movement. The problem has been that because people were so emotionally invested in seeing Standing Rock succeed, and they were so emotionally invested with the people who were there, like you said earlier, Ben, that we become hero. We hero worship. We hero worship some of these people, and some of the people we heard some things about Some people were like, well, you know, I don't know if he would do such a thing. He's such a good activist. And, you know, I don't know about her and that kind of thing. And people were trying to tell their stories, but because people liked some of these personalities so much, their stories were drowned out.
Wow.
That's a shame.
That is so tragic. That is so tragic. I mean, we become the monster. We become the monster that we ostensibly want to fight. Not in so much that, not so in so much as the sexual assault, because like you said, it's always been there. But we begin to behave in manners that we've criticized vehemently with like Roy Moore, like with people who knee-jerk defend them, and because that's their hero, that they would never see that it's possible that this guy is a predator. And we're doing that in our circles, in so much so that I honestly did not know, because I wasn't there and all I had was secondhand information. I had no idea some of the tragic things that were happening out at Standing Rock. And, you know, and I'm in these circles online, but what was happening there in person was totally different.
Yeah. And the thing, and I'm going to end my little bit here, because I want to give everybody, because Noah knows how I can talk. The thing that bothered me, I think, the most, aside from the fact that these things happen, and you know, I'm never going to name names. So I honestly don't know these people. I've never actually I think I've physically met one of them. But I don't know these people. I don't have any authority to tell you who's telling the truth and who isn't.
Right.
So for me, that's my perspective. It's unfair for me to sit in front of a bunch of people and say, this is what I think about these allegations of a very personal nature, because of my personal relationship with this person. I feel really, really, really uncomfortable doing that, because like you said, there are things people don't know about me that would probably terrify them. So I'm don't take my word on anybody being a decent person. But what bothered me was when I brought up these concerns to other people who were more high profile, more visible in the online communities than me, who were men, who had personal relationships with these people. And I would say to them, look, I'm not in a position to ask these people if they actually did these things. You need to bring this up to them and ask them what's going on with this, and they wouldn't do it.
Wow.
So if we can, like Anoa said, if we can't even be comfortable enough to ask the question of the people we're in relationship with in this movement, then we're in a really horrible spot.
Wow. Wow. And what authority, or what gives us the right then to even be, you know, leaders in this issue, representing progressiveness, right? We have no moral authority above any other group, because these things are happening right here in our circles, and so many times we don't even say anything about it, and shame on us. Jamie, listen, thanks for joining us, Jamie. I just want to give you the floor and speak on any of these issues. Like we're talking about sexism, but particularly sexual harassment and sexual assault in progressive circles, and not only in person, but also in the social media atmosphere, in that orbit. I mean, because it happens, and it happens all the time. So Jamie, take the floor. So I'm sorry, Jamie, you are still on mute. So hit unmute for us really quickly, and the floor will be yours. Yeah, you have to hit it. All right, there you go. There we go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loudly and clearly.
Okay. I'm kind of with Jacqueline a little bit, because I really don't know anybody in this. You know, it's like you develop these relationships with people online, and it is very difficult to you know, see them and see this situation unfold.
Right.
And I remember when the Me Too thing was really going viral, and I'm like seeing it all across my timeline. It's like, yeah, I have one of these too. So it was like, and then to see the bring of all these stories that are coming out is just, yeah,
so from the perspective of someone who you see, I think she froze. I think her camera froze there. Might be an internet issue there. From the perspective, and Jamie, when your connection gets back, you can chime in on this too. But let's kind of break this up piece by piece, because Jacqueline, you said something there. It's like, if people knew some things about me, right, they'd be like, oh, you know, they'd probably be terrified too. And I think it's important.
I know it's perfect. You know everything you need to know. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Noah, you and I, we know each other a little bit better than they know us. So no, but no, seriously, there is there's passion for the work, and then it's understandable to have passion for the people who you see leading the work. But I think it's vitally important that we intentionally separate ourselves from the people doing the work and the work that needs to be done. I think we don't create that distinction, that delineation, then that's going to always make us susceptible to hero worship that won't allow us to even consider that some of your favorites are problematic. You know, I'm a prude. I'm an old guy, but and I'm conservative in so many ways. But you know, if somebody told you, there's a couple things that some people could tell you about Ben that you wouldn't believe, that I would just go ahead and say, yeah, that's true. And I don't feel like we have to tell you all the bad stuff about ourselves. But if that's what it takes for you to understand that you really shouldn't put much stock in any individual person, put your stock into the movement and into the issues. So let's go with a Noah, and then Jacqueline, and then Jamie, if your signal is back, chime in on that for me really quick.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'm absolutely perfect, except for my Slack tirades when I curse everyone out, but that's a whole nother story. But if you want to hear why I will not run for office, you can check out Brandon's episode of the Discourse with me. Guest on it. Huh?
Did you say that on the Discourse?
Yeah, I explained why I wasn't going to run for the office on the Discourse. Anyway, you got to check out Brandon's show. But anyway, so but no, I absolutely agree. And we also got to be really careful how we're talking about these issues, right? Because we don't want to say, even though I know people are like, well, whatever, it's all bad. But if the accusation is sexual harassment or sexual or unwanted touching, sexual assault, right? Then we should not be calling it rape, because rape is something that's very particular, specific.
Yeah.
We need to be very clear with what we're talking about. We need to make sure that if we don't have the vocabulary, if we don't have the know-how to have the discussion, we need to start getting in the habit of asking questions and seeking out people who could help us work through things. Because there are quite a few things that I need help working through. Actually, my 16-year-old kind of helps me work through some of this stuff too. Because you know, the younger kids, because when we were coming up, we didn't get it, and it's not an excuse that we're a different generation and we didn't really have these conversations. Like you know, we've talked about before. I mean, like as a kid, like in the hood, we played a hide and go get it, like that, which is a very risky, not okay game.
Right.
And my son is in the background laughing at me now. But seriously though, right? There are instances, there are ways that we experience intimate interactions when we're growing up, particularly when I was growing up in an urban neighborhood in the 80s and 90s, that is not very healthy. And by today's standards could be considered criminal, you know? Right. But we also need to reteach and reprogram ourselves, because some of us have learned things that are not right. It's not healthy. That doesn't necessarily make us bad people. We just have more learning and growth to do.
Let me go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, I will give one quick story about me that is worthwhile, because I think what's super important from a man's perspective is it's amazing how, let's just be real, it's amazing how much a man's sexuality at a certain stage is tied up in their friends and the opinions of their friends and what their boys are going to say about it. And I never forget when I was borderline, I had gotten like my feelings hurt. I don't know which girl it was, what year it was. I know it was like my freshman, maybe sophomore year in college. that I really started to borderline being a simp, being a fuckboy. And I really started, I was telling my boy how I was gonna, I'm gonna show them, I'm gonna start this music label. It was grandiose and problematic. I'm gonna start this music label. I'm gonna make all this money, and I'm gonna show these girls that these girls ain't about nothing. And they're gonna be, serving. I was angry, lashing out, and one of my friends heard it. Now, this is a friend to this day. Like, he was in my wedding, and he looked at me. He said, "Yeah, I'm gonna say exactly how he said. He said, nigga, you got problems." he just straight out told me, "Nigga, you got problems." And that, hearing him say that, changed probably 70% of my trajectory towards my relationship towards women, because I looked at my friend and I'm like, why does he think I have a problem with this? Let me sit down and analyze why my friend thinks I have a problem about with the things that I said. And then, in my anger, it cleared the clouds away. And I realized that's just not some stuff that you do, right? And it took some time. And I said that story for this one reason only. Men, we have to do our part in this and tell people that they have issues. Tell other men, you have issues. What you're talking about right now, you don't. This is not normal. This is not healthy. It probably is illegal in most cases. And those are things that we need to be able to say to each other, because if we don't, then we're going to be co-signing on behaviors that should never be co-signed on. Let me toss it to Jacqueline.
Uh-oh, where is it?
There you go. We can hear you now. Oh, well, we lost you, and now hit it one more time.
Okay, let me do it again. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's one of my terrible flaws. I'm impatient. I just stuff it right now, and I cuss a lot. So, which is also why I will never run for office. But yeah, the whole focus, especially in the progressive movement, that has it's kind of it's perplexed me. I don't even think that's the right word. It's not that it's perplexed me. It has it's made me, it's driven me to anger. Let me just say it. It's just driven me to just rage how people are so fixated on personality in the progressive movement. And everybody has been politically awakened by Bernie Sanders in 2016, and I guess this is one of the places where my age and growing up in the Black Panther experience, being fed lunch during the summer at the Black Panther house, and my uncles being Panthers and being taught by a mom who integrated her high school. So I get this early education on how effed up this system really is, and so, everybody finding out in 2016, half of the stuff that I knew when I graduated high school was like, well, welcome to the struggle, I guess. But then people fixated on like these 5 issues or 2 or however it was. And then they splintered off into who spoke their particular truth in a way that they liked the best. Right? Who talked about these particular issues the most? If people weren't talking about the DNC lawsuit, then people didn't want to listen to them. If people weren't talking about Hillary Clinton and rigging the primaries, then people didn't want to listen to them. And dear God, if you talked about Black issues, didn't nobody want to listen to you at all. So this whole personality-driven movement is such a detriment to the actual work, because as we have learned, the work is going to be here regardless who does it.
Right.
So your personality, your favorite personality, and especially for those of us who are a little older, and I know it's true for people who are much older than me, who watched their leaders die. Yeah. Be targeted for imprisonment and never to be seen again, still in prison after 40, 50 years. They literally saw their favorite personalities removed from the scene, and the work still had to be done. So they had to focus on the work. And I'm so concerned in the progressive movement that all of these people are focused on personalities, and they're not paying attention to any of the work because they're so concerned about what people are saying about this person or that person, as opposed to what these people are doing, because nobody is holding them accountable for their actions. So they're doing things that seem harmless, like using a horribly racist example. Nope, I'm never gonna let that go. Never in my life am I gonna let that go.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Hang on. Like that's a great inside joke that I'm not even privy to.
Or you mean claiming that someone of import nationally, that's a Black figure, was racist directly to your face, and that never actually even happened, right? Okay.
That's the new lie. Yeah, that is the new lie. That's lie on top of a year of lies.
Hang on. That's two inside jokes. Like, I like to be on the inside of the inside jokes. Now is this something we can't discuss on there? Y'all just have to tell me offline.
Well, see, I don't want to hijack this conversation for that conversation.
All right, tell me offline then.
But it is a part of the conversation.
It is.
If we couldn't deal with that with honesty and recognize that kind of behavior, racism, exists in every movement where you've got a lot of disparate white people who were formerly completely oblivious to political corruption and malfeasance, and all of a sudden they're hurting now and they want their problems solved, and they don't want to listen to the people who've been struggling the longest. If we're not going to deal with that, how in the world are we going to deal with sexual assault? When it's the same power dynamic. It is the same power.
Absolutely. And to build on that, I mean, just a little context for people like, what are y'all talking about? Just, I know, and folks think that I'm petty, and I'm denying people their free speech and stuff. I am petty. My son is in the background, mouthing some more. Mommy, according to the quiz on Facebook, mommy is, I don't give a petty. But there's a quiz, and that's how I rate it. but for those who remember, in the summertime, I wrote the piece. Jacqueline and I were among those that directly challenged some larger white progressive YouTubers for the mischaracterization of the meeting that was held at the UNAC conference in mid-June by Black Alliance for Peace. I've talked with Ajamu Baraka about it. I mean, so as Jacqueline's done interviews about it. We did Jacqueline and I actually did two whole long conversations about race in these spaces and stuff like that. Anyway, the initial offender recently, in connection with this whole conversation of actually providing, more support and defense for for Jordan's version of events with Chelsea Lyons and others, Claudia Stauber has now escalated her allegations against Ajamu Baraka, and she claimed that he called her a racist to her face. If he did, he had good reason to. I mean, because you're kind of racist. I forgot that I upset you so much that you don't want to talk to Black people, so I don't even know why you mentioned his name anymore. But anyway, putting all that aside and bringing us back to this conversation, there is something to be said about the power dynamic and the way in which platforms are leveraged to either have pissing contests or fights. Like we saw this happening at the end of the election cycle, in the general election. We had the battle of the sexual assault victims, right? And I think I did a conversation about it in one of my episodes, because we saw the Clinton campaign decided to dig in because Trump is so awful, and he has all these women who have accused him of everything from sexual harassment to rape to, all these different bad charges, and even potentially, an underage girl, like all types of stuff. So they paraded out all these allegations, and there was little conversation. There was little concern for the victims themselves, the people who made the allegations, or the conversation. And then to retaliate, Trump drags out all of a couple of Bill Clinton's accusers, right? And it's like this tit for tat thing that happened. And the conversation and actual issue about the treatment of women, particularly in the political landscape, was completely lost, particularly when Democrats were trying to elect the first woman. Like it's a strange phenomenon. So now to see the Me Too conversation evolving the way it has, and again, Jacqueline and I have talked about this too, how it's an older concept that was instituted by women of color previously to raise awareness and bring attention to, and now here we are in this space. But it's really interesting to see the form that it's taking across all the spaces, whether it's your Lena Dunham, who's always taken her foot out of her damn mouth, and just seeing that there is now a call for women of color to divest themselves, not just from the Lenny letter, as one writer just recently did. She said that she only stayed around with the Lenny letter for as long as she did because she had a good relationship with the editors. But Lena Dunham herself was basically like a hippie racist along with her friends and had a bunch of other issues. But what's really interesting, you know, we see SEIU having issues and stuff with sexual harassment. I mean, but this is the thing with the campaigns, because this was the same issue with both the Clinton and Bernie campaigns. You know, there are people who were accused of sexual harassment and they just got moved someplace else. We see this in corporate America. There is something that is endemic and it's wrong in American society in general, and how we're handling people who do things in this way and leverage and manipulate power to the detriment of whether they're subordinates, co-workers, other volunteers, whomever they may be, people in those spaces. And we have to find a way to deal with them, you know, that makes people are accountable, and not just those people, but those who create the environments to allow them to hide amongst us. Because that's the thing too, right? Like, I understand that your friends or your coworkers or your mentee or whomever it is, it's when we care about people, it is natural to want to protect them and stand by them. But at the same time, and I think about this as a mom all the time, like, heaven forbid my son did something or my daughter did something. I'm like, would I be able to stand by them and defend them no matter what? Or would it have to come to a time where it's like, yeah, you messed up. You just need to, you just need to fess up. And that is a real tension. It's very difficult, right? Because I love my kids more than I love my own life. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when we're so close to people that we care about and they do something that's so wrong, we also, there's a sense of guilt, right? So some of that covering up for is not just covering up for them, it's covering up for ourselves. How did we allow this environment to exist? Because we don't even want to deal with it. Because then we have to come to terms with whether or not we were in some way culpable as well for this space that was created to foster and allow these negative behaviors to exist. So it's so complex and complicated. And instead of piling on social media, trying to, shush people into submission, I mean, we got to get real and get deep and have conversations about how to deal with these issues and still do the work that we're trying to do. Because here's the problem. We'll continue to push people along for promotions or give people more funding or power or access and disregard how they're treating others. And that ultimately inhibits the ability of us to really create sustainable change in a meaningful way.
Let me make a comment, and then one last question that I want to ask for you two to address. The comment is piggybacking off of what you said, Anoa, about platforms and all this love and respect and admiration for people with platforms. And I kind of want to, I have to hit something on the head very directly. Nobody that you see with a platform, with maybe the exception of Cenk Uygur, nobody really can put you on. I want to just put that out there, because everybody is out here hustling, trying to get theirs and trying to make it. So, there's no amount of or
even if they can, they probably are not doing it because they had to hustle hard, and they're gonna make you hustle hard too.
Right, exactly. And the reason I say that is because I have people slide in my DMs and ask me for favors all the time. And I really kind of laugh, not laugh at them, but I just tell them straight up, hey, I'm trying to get where I'm trying to get to. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how to pay some bills myself. And I say that to say there's nothing, if you're trying to get into these spaces, right? If you see somebody on Twitter with 50,000, 25, 35, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, they really can't do anything for you. And so I'm saying this as a direct cautionary tale to people who are wanting to get platforms. There's nothing. Don't exchange nothing for nothing. Let me just put it just like that, right? Because the most you're going to get, and let me just say it kind of candidly, like I told Noah, you're going to end up fucking somebody and all you get is a retweet. Be real? Because that's all they really can give you. That's all they can really give you is a retweet. They don't really have the money to put you on and set you up. So, and the reason I say it is because there's this misconception about numbers that you see on Twitter and on YouTube that do not translate into real capital for you to help your vision. And I believe you guys are trying to do the right thing for the right reason and trying to push, and you're willing to do whatever you can to get there. And I'm just letting you know that none of us with with these followers on Facebook, none of them can really do anything for you. So just know that from somebody who has like 35,000 people who follow me on Twitter. Know that from somebody who's worked with people who have 2 million followers, who gets retweeted by people who have 3 million followers, and who gets job offers from people with all kinds of resources. And realistically, everybody's out for themselves. So don't really trade anything for anything. That being said, feel free to comment on that. The other thing is, I want you to comment on how we can make this moment a transformative moment, and how do we keep it from being a wasted moment. I honestly see this as an opportunity for us to change from boys will be boys to an era of accountability. But I think it's possible that we can miss it. So let's start with Jacqueline, address those, and anything else that you want to say, and then tell our audience about how to get up with all those kind of things. Just and then Noah.
I'm nobody, because I swear, man, I just, if you're about the work, I mean, social media has done so much to amplify so many voices and so many stories that people otherwise would never have heard about. Nobody would have known about Aleppo or cared about Aleppo or knew where it was were it not for social media. Nobody would have known who Philando Castile was if it weren't for social media. I mean, so social media has its power, and that's wonderful. At the same time, it don't pay the bills. I swear. It just, it's great. I was able to meet wonderful people like Noah, and I got a chance to meet her in person because I had some extra money, and I decided, hey, I'm going to Chicago, and I've got a chance to connect with people who I can have great conversation with and exchange great ideas with. But at the end of the day, it's all about the work. It is, none of this can be about what I can get out of it. It has to be, whose story do I need to tell people that most people don't know, that I can use this platform to help them out. That has to be what it's about. Yeah. I mean, for me, and I know that's our focus for me and my husband. At this point, we're so tired of talking about American politics in this election and the outcome of it that we're just like, we're talking about Zimbabwe right now. So it's like, because I mean, that's how big this work is. There's plenty of the work, but it's nobody's going to be millionaires off of it. And I think we need to keep that in the front of us. And I think that's true for everybody who's doing it, because we all want to be able to. I think everybody says at one point, I would love to do this, full time, so that my passion can pay my bills. Well, most. A lot of old revolutionaries retire from their jobs saying that. So, and that's okay. So I think that if we keep that in mind, even as people who are behind the mics, in front of the cameras or whatever, that's doubly true for the people who watch us, because I don't want anybody looking at us, at me and my husband, and saying, I love what they say so much, that when they hear something that that I did or that he did that is horrible, that they seriously need to question and hold us accountable for, I don't want their response to be, oh, they could never do that.
Right.
Yeah, just don't. I mean, we're human just like everybody else, so we've got to be held accountable too. And how do we make this moment? How do we not let this moment slip? I think we've already kind of crossed the first Rubicon of, like Anoa said earlier, the online tit for tat. Mm-hmm. I think right now, you said that somebody's being interviewed, but it would have been nice if there was an investigation that was going to go on, if people would have just let the investigation happen. And I'm not saying that the people who were victims should have not told their story, but if I'm accused of something, I'm not going to get online and threaten to sue people. But if if there's anything that I take away from this, that I want other people to take away from this, is that conduct yourselves in a way that if you're innocent, then then act like you're innocent. Though don't use the power of your platform to go after people who are making you look bad. And when you see your personalities, your favorite personalities doing that, pull on their coattails and say, yeah, that doesn't look good. Now, you can't make people do anything. And I actually know someone who was involved in the situation who tried to do that to no avail. But I also know plenty more people who are involved, who were like, well, I understand. No, how do you understand that? How do you understand somebody using that power and that authority of the position that they have amassed to silence someone? How is that okay with you? How is that reasonable in any sense? So I think for me, other than what Anoa said, being honest and having the real conversations, and like you said earlier, men need to check each other.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times, and I don't know why this is, but a lot of times a man won't listen to a woman. In some instances, if the relationship is pre-existing and there's a good, communication between the two, it's possible. But sometimes, the best checks come from a brother who says, "Nigga, there's something wrong with you." Just like sometimes the best.
I better not catch out my followers tweeting the N-word at me, even if it's the A. I'm gonna come for you.
Right. Just like the best checks in my life have been when a female friend has said, "Heifer, what the is your problem?"
Yeah. For sure. We all need that. We all need that friend. We all need that people who will be honest with us, and it's hard. Like it's hard to do that. Jacqueline, before I toss it to Noah, tell everyone how they can get up with you.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Search under Luqman Nation, LUQMANNATION, 2 words, and you'll find us there.
Awesome. Noah, how do we make sure that this moment doesn't get away from us and we slide back into everything is normal?
I mean, we have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. I mean, that is the moment we're in, period, as a society, right? I mean, part of the reason why that we're seeing a resurgence in vitriolic racism, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, the reason why we're seeing so many things happening right now is because we've tried to do that whole, oh, let's all smile and be all one. And we're not going to talk about these things like, in the TV shows where you don't talk about things in front of company. Like, right. Okay, but you don't talk about things when company's not there either. Like, we really have to dig deep and deal with this stuff. Like, one of the things I know Ben and I have had this conversation, Jackie and I have had this conversation, some of us have had this conversation. You don't talk about the race issue, right, within progressive spaces because it's divisive. Or we don't want to give the Clinton, the centrists, any ammunition against us since they already claimed that Bernie was racist. We can't talk about these issues. We don't want to talk about the sexism because Bernie was sexist and misogynist and this and that. But we have to address these issues. I want to just touch on something real quickly Jackie had said earlier about learning about, how this has been a long embedded thing. And like, even when you go back into the older waves of these movement spaces, when you think back in terms of the Panthers, people always, for the most part, when they talk about the Panthers, they always mention, Huey, they always mention Fred Hampton. People will even mention Eldridge Cleaver, like you should not, because he was a rapist. Like, literally a rapist, but that's a whole nother story. But like we tend to overlook the women that made these spaces. We talk about Dr. King, we talk about Malcolm X. Okay, some folks might get to Rosa Parks because she was just so tired. But even the story of Rosa Parks, right, is retold in a way that she's just some fragile seamstress when she really was a strategic mind involved in a very particular plan that was set in motion, right? I mean, Ella Baker was a very strategic person with a very strategic mind. So even the retelling of our movement spaces and our history is sexist in many ways. And this is not to blame men and make men feel bad themselves. Just like when I talk about racism and things like that, it's not to blame white people and make white people feel bad about themselves. I mean, if you feel bad, maybe you need to, do some, I don't know, Hail Marys or something to feel better. But I mean, like, we really need to push through uncomfortable conversations. Like, I have to sit there and have uncomfortable conversations and face uncomfortable situations quite often to come to terms with the things that, whether it's in my personal life or professional life, that I'm not doing right or well, or how I can do better. And if we're really going to not just, fight the right and fight the centrists and all this other stuff, by the way, what is a progressive Republican? Isn't that just a Democrat?
I swear, Anoa, you and I are twins for real.
Our birthdays are 4 days apart.
I'm literally ready to say the same exact thing at that same exact moment. But go ahead. That's a whole nother show. Go ahead.
That is a whole other show. Like, what is a progressive Republican? Isn't that just a centrist Democrat? Like, I'm really trying to understand here that whole idea. But what I'm saying though is we're gonna have to come back, Jackie, for that coverage about progressive Republicans.
It's out of control.
But seriously though, right? We really need to, it's not just, just focus on the issues, because the people that we claim to care about in the communities and in the across the country, these are the issues that people are grappling with. There are workers. There's a big protest in New York tonight about boycotting Wendy's. I believe it's farm workers because of the sexual harassment. I mean, it's pervasive and prevalent, and we have a society that is hypersexualized, men and women in different ways. And these things are happening in various spaces, whether it's younger people and being predators attacking younger people or their coworkers or peers. I mean, we have to find a way to deal with this. One of the things that just completely like messed me up. I'm an Ohio State football fan. Don't be holding that against me. Hopefully we kick Michigan's butt this weekend. And to see Ezekiel Elliott get suspended, Zeke Zeke was off the last championship team. I mean, one of my favorite players of the current, kids that came out. And to see that he was involved in some inappropriate behaviors involving a young woman, that really hurt. But at the same time, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm such a football fan. Oh my God, Zeke. And disregard, his suspension. He was appealing his suspension. He was with the Cowboys. And he's going, I think, to go for like meditation therapy, something. I forget where he's off to right now while he's suspended. But like that's just something that I know, like in terms of people who I'm a fan of, just because I'm a fan of the work, just because I really, really appreciate something, doesn't mean that I'm going to disregard the very real costs of people's actions on others around them. And that is something that we got to start working on. So I try also in my own personal interactions to help raise my children, to help engage with my brothers and people that I directly know and build with, that we have better interactions with people. I mean, I grapple with it in my own internal spaces as well, because we're really putting our time and energy into building something that's sustainable and dynamic for the long haul, and not just what looks good for YouTube. Yeah. So that's just where I'm at. Well,
thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Jamie. I know you had a signal problem with your signal. Thank you, Anoa, as always, for stepping up and helping us with this conversation. The most important, so many takeaways. But the only thing I want to reiterate is for us to not allow this moment to be slide back into next year. We're covering up sexual harassment. We're covering up sexual assault. No, we have to make this become a transformative moment so that the culture, I really believe that we're on the cusp of a transformative moment where the culture shifts from boys will be boys to boys will be terrified of doing these things because they know they could be held accountable. And I think if we can get that done, then we've seen a quantum leap in human culture that, I mean, who would have expected it could have happened in our lifetimes, because it has always been boys will be boys. So I just want to do my part. And ladies, thank you so much. When we do this again, obviously we want to have you back and anyone else who has more input on this. Thank you to everyone on YouTube who's been participating with all their feedback. We really appreciate you. And until next time, I have one problem here, is that all this time as I getting ready to close, I didn't pull up my closer music. So I'm filibustering. There it is.
We're going to have to sing for you.
The Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.